Good afternoon, everybody. Today we are interviewing Jaye Richards-Hill. Jaye currently works for the Microsoft Middle East and Africa Education Leadership Team as the Regional Educational Transformation Lead and Senior Education Specialist. She has over 30 years of international experience in training and teaching as a science teacher and in school management, with a focus on disseminating good practice in ITC in the classroom. She has taught in higher education institutions and produced and mentored classroom-based research for General Teaching Council in Scotland and university honours students. She has worked at government level on projects including the recent Operation Phakisa Education Lab for the Office of the President in South Africa. The Scottish Qualifications Authority Future Models of Assessment Group, and was a member of the ICT in Education Excellence Group, which was a small collective of education experts which advised the Secretary of State for Education in the Scottish Government on reforms to the National eLearning Project GLOW and the technology-driven transformation. She's also worked as an education consultant on large-scale digital transformation projects in Europe, India, the Middle East, and Africa. Jaye is based in South Africa and lives in Johannesburg. Jaye, thank you so very, very much for joining us. And yeah, if you can just say hello to all our listeners.
Hello to all your listeners, and it's really great to be with you this afternoon, Claire.
Oh, wonderful. Jaye, can you please tell me a little bit about the industry you currently work in, and maybe a little bit of a background on the company you work for and what it is that they do in the marketplace?
Sure, yeah. So I work for Microsoft and Microsoft's education team more specifically. And Microsoft has the largest education team around the world of any of our large tech companies. And much of the work we do is working with schools, with individual teachers and leaders, and with governments and system leaders around the world to support them on their education strategy and on education improvement and raising attainment all up.
Oh, wow. That's a really, really interesting position you have there. And what is it exactly that you do? What do you do? What does a normal day look like for you? What does your job entail?
So my job entails, well, many things, and no 2 days are the same. So first and foremost, I act as a support and a subject matter expert to our individual education teams across the Middle East and Africa. So the different countries and subsidiaries within Microsoft across Middle East and Africa would use me when they want to work with their governments or large school groups to provide support, subject matter expertise, to work with them around policy and help to deepen the relationship between Microsoft and those governments and system leaders. Another large part of my work is working directly with governments around their education policy change. Particularly during this time of COVID-19, we've seen a huge shift to online learning and hybrid models of learning. And much of the work that myself and my team have done over the past year has really been supporting this shift that we've seen away from face-to-face instruction to an online learning environment, which has necessitated a total rethink about the pedagogical aspects of delivering learning. I think I spend a lot of my day answering email, probably 300 plus emails a day from various different people asking for various things. And I also work in what we call V teams or virtual teams, which are closely related to Microsoft's product and program development on a worldwide scale for education.
Oh, wow. So you are definitely at the coalface of what we're talking about, and that is about the impact of technology on the world today.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I mean, I used to spend so much of my time traveling and going to individual countries across the Middle East and Africa and meeting with system leaders and thought leaders to talk about how they were seeing education moving forward in the future and how technology particularly was enabling better learning and teaching and making education more relevant for the 21st century global economy and information age. It's strange that technology has enabled much of this work to move online over the past year or so, which was something we found very interesting.
Yes, I can imagine. I think, I think for a lot of us, it's stuff that we've just been talking about, and now we're actually living it.
Yeah, that's very true. And for me, it's actually quite good not to be spending 2 days a week traveling, being away from home 3 weeks out of 4, and all of that time. Of course, when I'm traveling, I'm not able to interact with our customers, and of course now I've got more time to do that. And I'm not saying it's ideal in many cases to be working online rather than doing face-to-face meetings and interactions. But I've certainly been surprised at how much of our work has been able to transfer online, mediated by great technology.
Yes. And how would you say the last maybe 5 years, I would say technology has taken its hugest steps, or the biggest steps, in the last 5 years. How has it directly impacted the work you do?
Well, I think the biggest shift for me in the past 5 years has been the growth of cloud capability. And we always say that the cloud is not a destination, it is a capability. Mm-hmm. And what that means is we're able to deliver much more in terms of technology to our education customers. We are able to really rethink about how learning and teaching can be delivered because of the capability of the cloud, which has brought in artificial intelligence, it's brought in predictive analytics. So we can now really pinpoint very accurately where individual learners are in danger of dropping out of the system at any level. And this technology, I think, has really changed the face of education more than perhaps almost anything has since they invented paper, I guess.
Oh, wow. Yes, I can imagine that.
And the challenge with cloud now is to get everybody to understand what this capability is and what the potential actually is. We're building artificial intelligence into all of our Microsoft products. And if you've been on PowerPoint recently, you'll know that there's now live translation tools in there. There are suggestions for designs that come up, all sorts of AI features built in across our product range. And this has got huge potential for use in classrooms around the world.
I can imagine. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you see it going forward and how you see it impacting classrooms in a positive way that it isn't being used today?
Yes, I think the big thing is around getting the infrastructure in place. And unfortunately, we still have a challenge in many parts of the world, Africa included, where the infrastructure in education systems is really not there yet to allow people to take full advantage of all of these changes and these new technologies that have come in. And part of my work particularly is working with governments across the region to really help them understand why basic connectivity infrastructure is so key to changing and transforming education going forward. When you've got this connectivity that's ubiquitous and available, then cloud technologies and artificial intelligence open up so many more possibilities for learning and teaching, and really helping young people to connect with the world rather than just their town or their country. And we are in a global economy, we're in a 21st century information age. So getting the infrastructure right so that education can take advantage of all of this technology is a critical piece of work that myself and other colleagues are working on all around the world at the moment.
Yes, I can imagine it must be very, very challenging to be able to get the infrastructure together specifically in third world countries like our own. What plans are afoot, and how long do you, is it envisaged before this kind of technology would become more mainstream in schools that don't have this access? Is there a plan for it to happen soon, or do you foresee it being a problem for many years still to come?
I think, if I'm honest, it's going to be a problem for a few years to come, particularly with those countries that are not as well developed. What we are seeing now is a trend from international lenders and donors, which is much more focusing around long-term infrastructure development, because there's a realization that if you really want to grow the economy of a country, then you need to grow the knowledge economy. And in order to do that, you need to have a connected citizenry. So we are seeing a shift around the world towards infrastructure projects that are connecting up not only schools, but health clinics and libraries and other public institutions or offices. And this is good, but you know, we're coming from a slow start on this, and really this whole connectivity infrastructure argument has only taken hold over the past 5 years or so, since there have been these huge developments in cloud technology and a realization that education can be much more democratized if we use the cloud responsibly in classrooms all around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Jay, you are very much in education, but you are not actually teaching students, but you are an educator. So would you say that you are more an educator of educators?
I think I'm an educator of educators, but I'm also an educator of government officials and politicians and IT people, and trying to reach a broad coalition around the need to transform education so that it meets the expectations of young people around the world. And my background isn't in IT, my background is in science and medicine. But I always wanted to be a teacher, and I eventually became a teacher, having worked in training and HR before that. And I think I always refer back to my time as a teacher and as a school leader when I talk about improving education and raising attainment. And I hope that much of what I talk with resonates with the governments and system leaders that I interact with, resonates around the fact that I was a teacher and I speak from that knowledge of working in schools and in universities.
Yes. If any of our listeners are intrigued by what you do, I know I am, what would you suggest they study to be able to follow in your career footsteps? What subjects would you suggest they need to be focusing on?
So I think what I would say is that we're seeing a big trend now in the big tech companies around the world. And this trend is away from formal degree qualifications. And what we tend to look for now is work experience is one, but technical qualifications are another thing. So what I would say is that it doesn't really matter too much what you study if you go to university, because what you need to be able to do is acquire the skills and competencies that allow you to work in any environment and in a very uncertain future. And these social and emotional skills like collaboration and creativity and problem solving and creative thinking are very, very important to us and other technology companies now when we're looking at taking in graduates and interns and experienced staff. And really the currency at the moment is the short learning programs that give a technical qualification. So any demonstration of skills in cloud technology, in data, all of those types of things, productivity tools, these international certifications that Microsoft offer and others as well are real currency when you're trying to demonstrate to a company like Microsoft why you should be working for them and what you would bring to them.
So in your opinion, I know for me, I've always just thought that the whole education system is going to change, and I think one is going to possibly have broader base degrees, and then, you know, sort of stack them up with lots and lots of short courses, and that makes sense from what you were just saying now, that education does seem to be moving along, and one is able to take a whole lot of smaller and shorter courses to be able to reach your career goals, as opposed to years and years and years of one particular degree. Am I correct in my thinking there?
Yes, in some ways you are. But, you know, if you want to be a teacher, then you need to have a subject matter expertise in something. And if you want to be a history teacher or a science teacher, then you're going to need a degree in history or science.
Yes.
And teaching, like the law and accountancy and medicine, is probably one of those professions that is going to require that formal evidence of learning that an honours degree will give you. But we are moving into an era where the jobs that our young people in school will eventually go to are probably, many of them aren't even invented yet. And if I look at some of the jobs that my colleagues are doing around data science, around machine learning, artificial intelligence, product design, none of these roles were really there before the advent of ubiquitous cloud technology. And so, yeah, my advice to anybody going to university is actually study what you really love, study what you enjoy, okay? Because you'll end up with a degree. And if you want to go and work for one of the big technology companies, then reach out to these companies and speak to people who work for them and find out, you know, what is the latest in terms of recruitment? What are we looking for different roles? What types of skills would you need to demonstrate?
Yes. Speaking of skills, you spoke a little bit earlier about creativity and thinking outside of the box. The soft skills that one can develop. Are there any particular soft skills outside, you know, that you can suggest to our listeners that they focus on right now? And I'm not talking about, you know, the actual course material. I'm talking about things that they could develop, soft skills they could develop that would put them a little bit ahead of the pack.
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing in this day and age is a real need for people to be able to work together. My team are spread out all over the Middle East. I'm an outlier in technology to collaborate together. And collaborating online is very different from collaborating face-to-face.
Yes.
There's a degree of separation in the communication, and the ability to work in a virtual team is increasingly one of the soft skills that seems to be rising to the surface when you ask employers what they're looking for. And also demonstrated ability to be able to problem solve, to think creatively, because much of the work we do now is addressing problems or challenges that we didn't know were there a year or two ago. Yeah. And COVID-19 is a big example of something that has literally turned the world on its head and demanded people who are able to work collaboratively together, separated by vast differences, but still work as if they're a team. And it's these social and emotional skills that are so critical to the future of employment. And it's what we're seeing employers increasingly ask for, as well as deep technical skills. And we actually commissioned a paper at Microsoft a couple of years ago called The Class of 2030. And it looked at what young people and all the other stakeholders who are currently in education, what their expectations were of an education system. These are the young people who come out of education in 2030. And the big thing that came from this was around personalized learning. It was around social and emotional skills. It was around feedback and obtaining the competencies that demonstrate that you can work in teams and you can solve problems. And this is, I guess, this is what we're going to see more and more of going forward. Less of a requirement that you have a degree in a specific subject, less of a requirement that you've got a particular qualification, but broad-based qualification and deep technical skills probably are going to be the trends moving forward for the foreseeable future.
Yes, and I can definitely see that. Do you know if there are any good places available at the moment to develop the soft skills? I mean, that you were talking about of being able to work in a team virtually.
So yeah, I mean, Microsoft acquired LinkedIn a few years ago. And if you go and look at LinkedIn Learning, there are hundreds and hundreds of courses on there in almost anything you could imagine. And if you search in there, you'll find lots of courses that are available that you can do without a charge that will help you to think about how you develop these 21st century competencies. So I would strongly suggest that anybody who's thinking about this goes into LinkedIn Learning and tries a few of these courses. And then, of course, you complete those courses and you've got a portfolio of evidence, if you like, albeit informal, of that you've actually gone and thought about these sorts of things. And that's so useful for an employer to see that somebody who wants to work for them has been proactive in thinking not only about the technical qualifications they need for the job, but also about the soft skills that make people successful or not in the workplace.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that. I think our listeners are going to find that bit of information absolutely invaluable when they're looking to apply for a job. Jaye, I want to ask you, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think, well, the most rewarding part of my job used to be when I got the opportunity to visit schools. I am a teacher at heart, and although I didn't work as a teacher for the early part of my career, I did work in training and development, and I've always wanted to be a teacher. And I get a huge amount of pleasure and satisfaction when I'm visiting our teams in different countries, when I go to schools and I see great use of technology in classrooms, and when I see great learning and teaching that's underpinned by good use of technology. So the technology is really invisible. It's the teaching and the learning that stand out. And that, to me, I think is a highlight of my job. And it is something that I really miss, because I haven't been able to do that for the best part of the year because of this COVID crisis, and I haven't traveled for a year. But that's certainly something that I look forward to getting back into.
I'm sure. I think a lot of us are feeling a little bit cut off without the day-to-day interaction that we've been used to all these years. Yes. And which part of your career do you least like?
If I look back across my career, what I've done has been what I've wanted to do. So I honestly can't look back and say that there's any part of my career history that I regret. Everything's happened for a reason, and I've learned something from each of the different career stages that I've gone through. So that's a question that I really can't give you an answer to, because I actually don't have any regrets. I think perhaps the only regret I do have is that I didn't become a teacher earlier. Okay.
Because that was actually leading into my next question. I was going to ask you, if you could do it all over again, what is the change you would have made? What is something that you would have done differently? And I would assume then that would be that you would have become a teacher a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I would have left school. I would have got a degree in history and Latin, and I probably would have been a university academic by now, teaching grades. That would be what I would change, I think. If I really had the opportunity to go back, that's what I would do again. But my parents discouraged me from going into teaching because they didn't see that as a career that was going to lead to success in the terms that they defined it, which was money and success. But the big thing about your career is you've got to enjoy what you do for a living, because if you don't, you're not going to make the best of it. And although I enjoyed all of the different jobs and career stages that I did, and I got great experience from it, if I had my time again, it would be very, very different.
Yeah. And if there was something that you could add onto your skill set that would make your job easier or better, or make you, I don't know, just make it more enjoyable, what would that be?
I think if I could really wave a magic wand and do that, it would be the ability to understand and acquire technical skills more readily. I have to work really hard at that. I'm 57 years old nearly, and my brain's a bit slower. And I'm surrounded by people in my industry who are very young and who seem to acquire these skills almost by osmosis.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if I could kind of get my one wish, it would be that I'm a bit more dexterous in learning how to use these complex types of technology. But that's not the job I do, to be honest, because we have specialists who I bring in to have these conversations with our customers. My job is selling relationships. I develop deep relationships with education leaders around the Middle East and Africa, which is focused very much on helping them to align their education strategy and policy behind the improvements that need to be made. And our technical specialists can work with them to architect solutions. But my role is really to talk deep education and help people to understand what great learning and teaching looks like, particularly when it's underpinned by good technology.
Yes. And what are the new opportunities that you feel will be coming available in your field over the next few years?
I think the big one is all to do with data. You know, I mean, artificial intelligence is based on data and machine learning. And there is going to be a huge need for data analysts and data scientists moving forward. They say that data is the new oil, and with the explosion in the amount of data we're generating because of cloud capability, the skill in using this data when you work with customers or organizations and help them make the best use of their data estate is going to be one of the new big skills and jobs as we move forward. And an understanding of the technology around that drives artificial intelligence goes hand in hand with that. Yes,
I can definitely see that. Data is king at the moment. And Jay, one last little thing before we end our chat. Do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners and for prospective learners and students wanting to go into your field going forward?
Yeah, I would say don't stress the subject choices. I would say do what you're good at, as well as making sure that you've got the basics right. So mathematics, English particularly, which is fast becoming a world language. Once you have those basic subjects, then do what you enjoy, because you'll do well if you enjoy it. And worry about your qualifications for employment once you've got that out the way. Because if you've got a good set of school qualifications and results, then unless you're wanting to go into a highly specialized career like medicine or law, then the field is pretty wide open to you. And also take the opportunity while you are at school to investigate some of these technical qualifications that are available in the new technologies that are coming in. Get a basic understanding of cloud, a basic understanding of productivity tools like Office, a basic understanding of spreadsheets and those types of tools, because you will never go wrong if you have that kind of certification or qualification. And then don't forget the soft skills. Schools are increasingly becoming more aware of the need now, not only to teach young people skills, but also that young people can demonstrate competency, which is how you use the skill that you've learned to do something. So search around and look. You know, LinkedIn Learning is a great place, I've said, but Microsoft Learn, MS Learn, and other sites like that can give you lots and lots of ideas about short learning courses and badges and other evidence of achievement that you can make. So focus on the basic subjects, spread that out with what you really enjoy and you're good at. And then while you're doing all of that, look around you and see what are the careers that are growing. And if you're not sure about what you want to do, don't worry about it, because it will evolve.
Yes, that's amazing advice. And I thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure everyone who's listened in today has taken home a couple of amazing diamond nuggets of information from you. And I thank you so much for spending the time to chat to us and explain a little bit more about what you do and how people can improve their skills to also become educators in your field.
No, my pleasure. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you very much. And we will chat again in our next time.